My name is Mike Riley. I'm a vice president of the local chapter. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker. He's going to be speaking about Firewise and how we can make our homes safer from wildfires. And Alex Bregenzer will be presenting how not only to keep our homes safe and ideas about how to keep our homes safe, but how can landscaping and plant choice on your homestead affect positively your safety? How can you reduce your risk? Alex is a graduate of Texas A&M, and he is with the Texas A&M Forest Service, covering 27 counties in central Texas.
I appreciate it, Mike. So first up, I just want to say thank you to the Native Plant Society for reaching out and offering me a chance to speak today. Like Mike said, my name is Alex Bregenzer. I'm the Wildland Urban Interface Coordinator for the Central Texas region with the Texas A&M Forest Service. So I came to the Forest Service, again, like Mike said, as a graduate of the Ecological Restoration Program at Texas A&M. I got a pretty good, solid foundation of fire ecology from that program. And again, I'm working on my Master's of Natural Resources degree in Fire Ecology and Management. Again, working as the Wildland Urban Interface or WUI coordinator in Central Texas, I get to wear a number of different hats. So I get to work as a wildland firefighter. I get to help out with a number of different community programs. I'm also friends with Smokey Bear. And sometimes I get the opportunity to do outreach and educational events like this. So there are a number of things that I'm going to talk about today, give you all a quick itinerary. We're looking at reducing wildfire risk and improving fire resistance around your home and on your property. We're going to talk a little bit about the Firewise USA program offered by the National Fire Protection Association. I'm going to talk about some success stories based on the risk reduction measures taken by some Texas communities. And then finally, I'm going to end with a call to action or a couple of simple things that you can do around your home to reduce your fire risk starting today. I'm also going to touch on some resources that y'all have available. And then, like Mike said, I'm going to answer questions at the end of the presentation. Type anything in the chat box. As we go, I'll try to take a look at that as well and just have, some answers towards the end of the presentation for you. All right, so starting out, I want to give a little background into wildland fire and fire ecology of the state. So Stephen Pine's a professor at the School of Life Sciences at Arizona State University. And he sums it up pretty well in his article After the Fire from 2012, following the Yarnell Hill tragedy that took the lives of 19 firefighters. The problem is a result of our actions, and it's going to take us taking action to work towards a solution to this problem. Pine says over the past 140 years, we have created by missteps and unintended consequences a firescape that threatens both our natural habitat and our built landscape. The problem is systemic, and that result is of how we live on the land. And something I really want to bring into focus is not necessarily living on the land, but more so living with the land. And I really think that we need to understand that land has its own ecology and needs that need to be taken care of to be healthy. And we really need to take that into consideration. I also want y'all to consider that the issue that we're looking at here is what we would call a wicked problem. And what I mean by that is there's no single correct formulation or solution to this problem. There are only going to be more or less useful ones. And so we need to understand that, and to understand that, one action is not going to be the end all be all solution towards this. So again, getting into fire history for the state, if we take a look at the historical fire data, almost all of Texas burned every 2 to 14 years. So compared to present day, we're looking at a changing firescape in terms of fire frequency. So I want you to think about your home for a second. What would your house look like if you didn't clean it for a couple of years? I see fire as kind of a cleaning service, and because we've removed it from our home for so long, we're looking at a pretty messy landscape. With that in mind, another concept that I want to talk about is fire dependence. Some ecosystems really depend on fire for regrowth. For example, lodgepole pine needs fire or some sort of heat source in order to release the seeds from their pine cones. Some ecosystems need fire to keep shrubs from invading or to remove dead grass that's going to choke out new growth. So we're looking at grasslands in that example. Some simply need fire to open up the forest floor, remove duff, needles, leaves, and to allow those new trees to grow up. So within Central Texas, we're really looking at grasslands, tall grass prairies, more so than we're looking at coastal marshes or pine forests in the fire-dependent ecosystems. Require fire or some other sort of disturbance to exist. So in Central Texas, we really have three major fire adapted ecosystems. Those are going to be the Blackland Prairie, the Edwards Plateau, and then Post Oak Savanna. And so in the Blackland Prairie, prior to human settlement, fire and bison grazing were two big important factors in the overall maintenance of the area. Native Americans also more than likely influenced the area greatly through burning through the landscape. Fires in this area, in this region, were typically large and would burn until conditions or landforms can contain them. And so now what we're looking at is, due to fire suppression and cattle grazing, we have honey mesquite, ash juniper, eastern red cedar, and a number of other fire intolerant species that are spreading pretty rapidly throughout the region. Same thing with the Edwards Plateau. Fire also played a pretty major role in shaping the vegetation here. Historically, the fire occurred here about every 4 to 7 years, and typically ash juniper was kept out of the uplands by fire and dense grass competition, and other trees such as the escarpment, live oak, and honey mesquite were kept kind of isolated among grasses. But because of concentrated livestock grazing and fire suppression, we've reduced the grasses and allowed trees, especially ash juniper in this region, to expand into the open areas. And so we're looking again at a different fire regime from historical patterns. So I want to reiterate that the wildfires are a natural process, and the fire triangle is actually how fire ignitions happen. And so, there are three things that make up the fire triangle. We're looking at fuels, which is kind of the base of the triangle. We're looking at oxygen, and then we're looking at some sort of heat or ignition source. So when we talk about risk reduction in terms of wildfire response, we're really looking at reducing the amount of fuel available. So we're taking a chunk out of that side of the triangle so that ignitions are less likely. So moving into the next piece, wildfires are happening more and more often near communities. So this first picture is actually the Bastrop complex fire. And as communities grow and expand, the wildland urban interface, especially where I'm working as a coordinator, that wildland urban interface is where developed areas are meeting undeveloped landscapes. And so these wildfires are becoming more and more prevalent. And this graphic right here is, it's from 2014, but it really shows that 79% of wildfires in Texas in this time period were within 2 miles of a community. And so again, we're looking more and more that wildfires within the wildland urban interface are growing as the communities grow and expand. It's becoming more prevalent. So we're also looking at 90% of wildfires in Texas are started from some sort of human cause. I'm not necessarily talking about arson, but I'm talking about for example, debris burning or roadside starts, where something that we are doing is causing a wildfire, either accidentally or unintentionally. But upwards of 90% are started by humans. I also want to talk about how wildfires are not just a rural issue. that's kind of a misconception, especially because, more and more so we're looking that they're located in the wildland urban interface. And when they are located in that wildland urban interface zone, they're becoming more threatening to lives and property. Resources are also going to be pretty stretched thin because there's going to be a lot of different needs. You're going to have resources that are needed to protect structures. You're going to need evacuations, traffic control. There's a lot of things going on, and there's not nearly as many resources available to address some of the issues that we have. So looking at home loss in a wildfire event, there's really going to be three main methods. First one of those is going to be embers. So, those are little firebrands, little coals that are sent out ahead of the fire. And that's not necessarily, as this picture kind of shows, those embers can be shot out close to up to 2 miles away. The next piece is going to be radiant heat. So that's where, the flames aren't exactly touching, but, whenever for example, if you sit in front of your, a fireplace, you can feel that heat coming off, a couple feet away. That's the radiant heat that we're talking about that can, ignite a home. We're also looking at, direct flame contact or flame impingement. That is, direct flames touching your home to ignite it. But the number one reason for home loss in a wildfire is actually ember ignition. So this is coming from firsthand accounts, from wildland firefighters, as well as some studies that have been done. The one that comes to mind for me is from Dr. Jack Cohen of the U.S. Forest Service and the Institute for Business and Home Safety. They've done a number of studies that I'm going to talk about a little bit later to figure out why homes are igniting. So in order to prevent home loss and improve survivability of your home, there are a number of things that we can do. So there are three big keys to risk reduction. And the first biggest one is going to be defensible space. So that is creating a buffer around your home that's going to be able to slow and stop the spread of wildfire. This is going to protect your home from flames getting too close and drastically improve the structural survivability in a wildfire event. So this is going to go hand in hand with our second piece, and the one that I'm going to spend the most time talking about today, and that's going to be fire-resistant landscaping. This includes, proper planning of which plants to use, where to plant them around your home to reduce the landscape's fire risk. This list shows some characteristics that we look for in fire-resistant plants. And lastly, I'm going to talk about home hardening. This method really we're looking at modifying or changing things around the structure and at the structure itself to reduce risk. So this is really just general maintenance. Focusing on when we talk about home hardening, we're focusing on particular trends, such as leaves and gutters, unkept garden beds, litter on roofs, and debris under decks. These trends have been shown to cause home loss, particularly through ember ignition. So these pictures show a variety of different risk reduction measures that have been used. So in the upper left, we're seeing a xeric style landscape. The upper right is going to have good immediate zone, which is the first couple feet from the home. The bottom picture shows some native plants mixed in with the landscape design, and that's going to reduce the structural ignitability of that home. So again, talking about fire resistant landscaping, the idea behind fire resistant landscaping is to have plants placed in a way that allow them to lessen the chances of fire reaching your home through the landscape. So an overall key to this, no matter where you are, is that homeowners should maintain a healthy landscape through proper cleaning, pruning, watering. These healthy landscapes are going to be more fire resistant, and plants with higher moisture contents are just going to do better during a wildfire event. Dead plants are essentially just fuel at that point. So this picture on the right shows a home that has a number of things that they could do to address to reduce the risk of wildfire here. So they've got vines that are growing up under their eaves, growing over the windows. They've got pretty heavy plants placed right next to the foundation. They've got a lot of dead plant material that could be pruned back and pruned away. You know, again, a number of things that they could address to reduce their fire risk. You know, a piece that I talked about in fire resistant landscaping is making sure we're putting the right plant in the right place. When we talk about this, we need to choose design elements that are going to allow for reduction of fuel continuity. So that's the vertical or horizontal separation of plant material. So again, that first 5 feet within the structure is critical. So we're talking about the home or structure itself, and the first 5 feet from the foundation is really the key. That's going to be what we call the immediate zone, and that's going to take top priority. So when we're looking further out, we're looking at, you know, about 30 feet out. We need to look at limbing up trees, reducing ladder fuels, spacing out plants into different plant beds. And when we talk about ladder fuels, when I say ladder fuels, I'm talking about plant material that allows for the vertical spread of fire. So this picture here on the right shows a really significant accumulation of ladder fuels. So you've got, you know, a pine tree that's losing its needles, and those needles can get caught in the mid-story vegetation. And so essentially what you have is you have a way for a ground fire that's coming in to ignite, you know, those ladder fuels that allow it to move vertically up into the canopy, where we have a lot more dead plant material that can allow that fire to spread faster. So this last picture is just one example of fire resistant landscaping. So this home has island beds where they have, you know, different plants kind of spaced out in different areas. They have limbed up trees, healthy vegetation. You know, there are a number of things that this home has done right. And so I also want you to remember this picture because we're going to look at it again later. So one of the questions I get most often when we talk about fire resistant landscaping is, you know, what specific plants are most fire resistant? And so I want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm not going to give you a list of species today, because there are a ton of variables that are involved with this. And you know, I don't want to give a list of species and say these are, you know, the best fire resistant species, and that not always be the case in every scenario. So what I do want to talk about instead are the characteristics of the plants that make them more, you know, low flammability, more fire resistant. I do want to reiterate that there are no fireproof plants. Every plant species will burn at some point, but it's, you know, different characteristics that make them less likely to ignite. You know, so as the list on the right shows, we're looking at low flammability plants are going to have certain fire resistant characteristics. So they have, you know, broad moist leaves. Those are going to allow for, you know, less fire to move through their vegetation. We've got loose branching pattern. Again, same thing. You know, think about how you would start a campfire. Would you have, you know, logs that are spaced really far apart, or would you try to have them more compact in order to ignite a little bit easier? So that's kind of the same type of thought process when we're talking about fire resistant landscaping. So deciduous plants are plants that are going to drop their leaves annually. We're looking at plants that are self-pruning, so you don't have a lot of, again, a conglomeration of dead plant material. We're looking at plants that have slow growth. Generally plants that are fast growing. So, you know, think of bamboo for an example, something that's going to, you know, explode in growth every year. That's going to be a little bit less, you know, or a little bit more flammable than some other species that maybe aren't as fast growing. We're also, again, you know, a healthy plant is going to be more fire resistant because it has higher moisture content. It's, you know, it's alive. You know, again, think of a campfire. Would you put a live limb on your campfire if you're trying to start it? No, you'd put something that, you know, ignites easier. You'd put, you know, dead leaves. Dead plant material is easier to ignite than live plant material. Also, you know, Texas natives in particular are going to be more drought resistant. They're going to require less water, and they're going to be able to tolerate local, you know, conditions. generally those are going to be, again, more fire resistant. Fire adapted species in particular, can have certain characteristics and are typically going to regrow more quickly after a fire. So one of the things that you want to look at first before you plant anything in your landscape is think about how that plant's going to grow. So what are its growth characteristics? What is that plant going to look like in 5 years? How often will you need to prune this plant for it to remain healthy? And when we talk about fire resistant characteristics, we need to ask a couple of different questions. Does this plant shed a lot of leaves? What do the leaves look like? Does this plant produce significant ladder fuels? Is this plant going to take a lot more care and more active care than another plant? Does the plant that we're looking at have significant sap or oils that are going to make it easier to ignite? An example of this, that I've seen used is rosemary. Rosemary is a great plant. It's a great aromatic. It's good for cooking. But if not taken care of and pruned properly, it can have a dead space in the center of it that can, accumulate a lot of leaves, and that can cause, be an ignition source and a cause where, an ember can get in there and again start a fire. And again, these are just things to think about. They provide a good starting point, but they're not the only things that you need to look at when we're looking at planting plants in a fire-resistant landscape. I also want to talk about defensible space when we're looking at a fire-resistant landscape. Defensible space takes in all of the fire-resistant landscaping principles into account. The goal is to reduce home ignition by creating a space around your home, from 0 to 100 feet. That's going to slow the fire. Defensible space also allows you to have a safer means of evacuation, provide a safer environment for firefighters. So this graphic on the right here, again, I talked a little bit about the home ignition zone, but you have your immediate zone, which is 0 to 5 feet, your intermediate zone, which is 5 to 30, and then your extended, which is 30 to 100. And that kind of gives you a priority level of what you need to focus on first. And that immediate zone, that 0 to 5 feet, includes the structure itself. And again, that should be the highest priority when we're talking about fire resistance. We need to look at that first to make sure that we're taking care of the things that are going on with our structure that could be causing some ignition points. We need to take a look around the foundation around our home. Within that, again, 0 to 5 feet is really the top priority. Everything else, again, is important, but it's a little bit lower priority than that 0 to 5 feet. So on a larger scale, it doesn't necessarily mean that a plant has to have all the fire resistant characteristics that I talked about. In order for you to have defensible space, you don't have to have only fire resistant plants in your landscape to have defensible space. But on a larger scale, a big key is finding balance between your different land management objectives. So, I get this a lot, but you don't have to have a clear-cut, no vegetation desert in order to have a fire resistant landscape. That's just not, that does not necessarily equate to meeting all your different land management objectives. The biggest element that we need to be looking at is breaking up fuel continuity on a larger scale. So this could mean creating shaded fuel breaks, which, this picture on the right is what a shaded fuel break looks before any action has been taken. This picture is what a shaded fuel break actually looks like. And what this does is this keeps the surrounding trees limbed up. You have, very few ladder fuels. You have grasses are minimal. Because it's shaded, there's not going to be a lot of understory or, grass shrub growth because there's not going to be enough sunlight getting down to the ground. What I really want to reiterate here is that this is one tool that you can use by creating a shaded fuel break on a larger scale. But there's no one answer here. It really depends on what your individual objectives are on your land. There's always going to be multiple solutions available. It's just trying to figure out which one's going to fit for your specific individual land management goals. So I was asked, and Mike sent me an email about ash juniper and kind of the pros and cons of having it in the landscape. So ash juniper has actually been it's a native species to Texas, and it's been here for thousands of years. But in many cases, it's become a native invasive. I want to mention that you can have ash juniper in your landscape, similar to this picture on the right. You just need to take certain precautions. So you need to make sure that they're limbed up, spaced out. You can create fuel breaks. You can create pockets of ash juniper throughout your landscape. Having a really dense shrub, ash juniper brush area isn't necessarily a good thing. And one of the things we talk about with ash juniper is golden cheek warbler habitat, especially in central Texas. So the golden cheek warbler, ash juniper is kind of key to their mating areas, but the key here is that it needs to be high quality space with the diversity of plant species, and it's not just super dense juniper stands. It needs to have mature juniper. It needs to have space throughout the trees. So again, ash juniper, it can be beneficial in the landscape, but you need to make sure that you are, managing it and taking care of it appropriately. So the last thing I wanted to talk about on this slide is, working with your neighbors where possible. There's a saying, many hands make light work. And there's also other benefits. You can cost share on a larger scale, and generally a more fire resistant community overall. You're able to achieve that through working together. So the takeaways here, again, with fire resistant landscaping, you want to be able to find balance between your home needs, the ecosystem's needs, and your land management objectives. You can have pollinator species that may not be as fire resistant in your landscape, just separate them out a little bit more to reduce that fire risk. You can have trees next to your home to provide shade in the summer. I know it's a big thing in Texas. We just need to make sure that they're properly pruned and healthy. Again, I want to reiterate that you do not need to clear cut everything and live in a concrete bunker to have a fire resistant house and landscape. That's not what we're advocating for. So moving on, we want to reduce our fuel load. We want to remove dead plant material where applicable, especially again around that immediate zone of the house. That 0 to 5 feet is really key. We want to reduce fuel continuity, so preventing vertical and horizontal fire spread by removing and reducing material, limbing up trees, creating garden islands, pruning back vegetation. And again, utilizing native and fire adapted species where available. Fire resistant, again, does not mean fireproof. And we need to make sure that we're putting the right plant in the right place. So the next thing I want to talk about is the Firewise USA program. So as a homeowner and community member, you have a number of different tools you can use to improve the fire resistance of your home and your neighborhood. And one of those tools is going to be the fire resistant or the Firewise USA program. So the Firewise USA program is offered by the NFPA, so the National Fire Protection Association. It's going to be a community level grassroots wildland fire risk reduction program. So it's more of a collaborative framework to help neighbors get organized, to take action to improve the fire resistance of their homes, landscapes, and in their communities. So there are steps to become a recognized Firewise site, and I know we have a number of different Firewise community members on the call today. So if I'm going over things that you already know, again, I apologize, but we're trying to make sure everybody's on the same page about this program. The first step is, if you're interested, contact me. My contact information is going to be at the end of this program. Best chance is shoot me an email. We can work on getting your community set up and getting you more information. From there, you need to organize and get your community involved. This can't just be a single person taking on this effort. It needs to be, you need to have community representatives. From there, we'll go on with the site visit. We'll do an assessment and evaluation. The biggest piece of the Firewise USA program is that it's creating actionable items that we can work on to reduce the wildfire risk. It's not just talking about, hey, we have a wildfire risk in our community. What do? It's hey, these are the things that we can do as a community to reduce our risk. So again, it's a really great program. And it has a number of different benefits. One of the questions I get often is, what difference does being a Firewise site make? And I want to reiterate that you do not have to be a member of the Firewise program to take measures to reduce the wildfire risk around your community, around your home. It's just one of the many programs that the Texas A&M Forest Service offers to residents and communities. It's a great tool to increase community involvement and organization and reduce your wildfire risk on a community level. So again, there are a couple of different benefits. One of those is going to be insurance, homeowners policy. You can reduce your homeowner's insurance cost. A lot of it is going to be, again, getting your community involved, though, to work together towards reducing your wildfire risk. So this graphic shows a Firewise community, the trails of Horseshoe Bay, that was very well prepared when a wildfire broke out August of last year. So we use this community as an example because they are a good success story. I'm going to try to show a video that was filmed prior to the trails fire. It really shows why being prepared for wildfire is important and the value of homeowner preparedness. And if for whatever reason the video isn't working well for you, I am going to show you a way to get to it after the presentation so that you can watch it on your own time as well.
Why I would want other communities to join the Firewise program? Because it provides a safer community for everyone. It helps your fire department in immeasurable ways. I have to make sure those guys go home to their families. I know they're going to be safer in the trails than they are in another portion of the city, just because of the work that these people have done.
We had 3 major fires in very close proximity to the trails. That's when fire became very real to us.
Having a Firewise community in my response district, it lets me know that I don't have to focus as much on this community and protecting their homes as I may have to focus on another community within the city. I know these people take care of their vegetation. They use non-combustible products when they're building their homes and outbuildings. I know that fire is on their mind.
So, and we've seen out here just in our community how quickly a wildfire can just devastate things. I mean, the Bear Creek fire, everybody still talks about it to this day. You know, anybody who thinks it couldn't happen is naive.
It would be hard for any fire department to defend this 350 acres if we weren't Firewise.
It's just a good thing all around. The community, the kind of the camaraderie that we generate among the community in the name of Firewise, and then the benefits we get from doing what you really need to do if you're trying to mitigate fire risk.
We now have a real common goal of working together to prevent fires.
The mitigation effort, I think, became very obvious to a lot of people when we had the big PK fires and the surprise fires. I think all of a sudden, all of us knew, uh-oh, there's smoke, and it was here, and it was within a mile of us. And so, yeah, it was scary. The doing Firewise to me is education.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
So that would be my message, is that this is not just another government program. It is a government program, but it's one that really brings the community together. It brings the fire service to the forefront of the community. The fire service needs to be the basic fabric of the community, and this is a tool that does that.
Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about the Trails Fire and the success stories from that. So these pictures were actually taken from the fire at the Trails of Horseshoe Bay. And as you can see, they really took the fire resistant landscaping to heart. They have trees are limbed up. They've used fire resistant materials in their homes. And I mean, the pictures kind of speak for themselves, but you can see how the fire was slowed and stopped before even getting close to the homes themselves to ignite them. So this was a reason why many of these homes didn't ignite. So again, defensible space does make a difference. Firewise, fire resistant landscaping does make a difference. You can see by some of the photos, in some cases, the fire came close or even up to the foundation. But because of the proper defensible space and the good fire resistant landscaping that was created, these fires didn't result in a home loss. That top left picture is actually the picture that I showed you earlier from the island garden beds. And I mean, as you can see, these principles and these tools do work when used correctly. So I want to end this presentation again, on a call to action or a couple of things you can do today, tomorrow, this week, this weekend, to help reduce the risk around your home. So first, we can start by cleaning up the vegetated areas around your house. We can remove leaves from gutters, clean out flower beds, get debris off your roof. Removing those fuel sources will reduce your fire risk. So next we can look at, properly pruning your trees and limbing them up. If it's a complex task, I would definitely recommend, and it's going to be better to talk with a local certified arborist. They're going to have the tools and the knowledge necessary to properly trim your trees. If available, you can use non-combustible materials, so rocks, concrete, metal, to line your garden beds to help stop that fire spread. We want to plant native and fire-resistant species where you can, and try to think through the life cycle of those plants before you put them in the landscape. Again, plant the right plant in the right place. And finally, if you're able to involve others in your community, wildfire safety around your home can be done individually, but protecting your community should be a group effort. Team up with your local fire departments and talk with them about the wildfire risk in your area, possible mitigation measures that you can take, and also to pre-plan in case of wildfire response. That's really, really important is reaching out to your local departments and getting them on board with what you're doing, and then also having them, getting them local knowledge and making sure that they're, they have pre-plans in place for the area that you're in. And again, if you want to look into the Firewise program, again, it's a really great tool, for you to use to better reduce your risk. So we can look here, we're talking about removing dead vegetation from gutters, pruning up trees. This is one example of using non-combustible materials, and then planting native fire-resistant species. So there are a number of different resources available to y'all. The NFPA website offers a wide selection of information on wildland fire related topics, and it's also where you can find out more information on the Firewise program. The Texas Forest Service website also has a tab called Preparing for Wildfires. It's going to have more information on protecting your home. This is also where you can find a number of our publications in a number of different places, including the fire resistant landscaping brochure that was sent out earlier today. Another service we offer is the My Land Management Connector. That's going to be a service that helps find reputable professional service providers in your area that are able to offer assistance for land management on your property. Also, I talked about Jack Cohen and the research that he's done. So Dr. Jack Cohen is a retired fire science researcher from the U.S. Forest Service. And again, I talked about, he spent a number of years determining how structure ignitions are occurring during wildfires and what we can do to address and mitigate the factors contributing to home loss. So that video, the Your Home Can Survive a Wildfire video, very educational, highly recommend watching it if you have time, and taking some of the concepts that he talks about and adapting them to your own home. And lastly, I wanted to plug in our education and prevention Facebook page. It has a lot of different and related wildland fire information on it. They post fairly frequently, and they're a great source of wildland fire information. So with that, I'm going to open the floor to questions. And if I do not get to your question during this time, the best way to contact me is actually going to be via email. I'm in the field fairly frequently, and while I try to return as many phone calls as I can, email is going to be the best way to contact me from there.
Excellent, Alex. Thanks so much. There was a couple questions, one in the chat, Alex, and some that came offline to me.
Okay.
And it talks some more about the balance between reducing risk and having a nice landscape and a healthy landscape. Because one of the specific questions in the chat was leaves can be compost and fertilizer and mulch.
Yes.
How do we deal with that?
Again, it's reducing the fuel continuity of what you have going on. So when we talk about, I agree, dead plant material does make good mulch. You can use mulch in your flower beds. That's not something that we're trying to move away from, because even though mulch is not necessarily a low flammability or it's not a fire resistant material. You need mulch in order to keep moisture in your flower beds, which will help improve fire resistance. And so I would fall back to fuel continuity. Use mulch in your beds, but maybe break it up. Use maybe some stones to break up that fuel continuity within your beds, if that makes sense. But I would still recommend cleaning out your beds and not leaving just a lot of dead plant material in them, because that will not reduce your fire risk, if that makes sense.
Yeah, balance is really tough.
Yeah.
Regarding the ash juniper, or some people call them cedar trees.
Yeah.
The ash juniper is normally, well, it's healthy generally, at least the ones that are in my area are healthy. They're not brown, and they're not some people call them matchsticks. I guess the key is, if you're going to have an ash juniper or a cedar tree, you need to have it trimmed up and also away from the house a certain distance, as you were talking earlier.
Yeah. Again, I think it comes back to, with ash juniper, if you don't limb them up, you have what I was talking about with the ladder fuels. You have a way for a ground fire to then go up and reach the canopy. And so I'm not saying that you need to remove all ash junipers or cedars near your home, but as long as you are, trimming them back away from your house, the limbs aren't touching the home. If you're able to trim them up, with ash juniper, it really depends on the site itself, or the tree itself, because there's recommendations about trim it up 6 feet. Well, if you have an ash juniper that's only 12 feet tall, you're taking half of the tree itself off. So what we recommend is if you're limbing up your tree, you do about 1/3 of the tree, of the overall height of the tree up, to reduce fire risk that way. So with ash juniper, again, as long as you're managing it and taking care of it, it's going to be more fire resistant than just leaving it to grow on its own, if that makes sense.
One other question is, should the community, the people that are on this call and this meeting, and other people in the community, should they interface with the fire department in their community? Or is that the first step, or do they go to POAs and try to get groundswell support and then go to the fire department? What do you think?
I think it can be a mix. I don't think there's any, one path forward, but I think that if you're able to involve your HOA, POA, and the fire departments as well, again, your local fire departments they have a lot of resources. Well, they have some resources and they have the knowledge. And again, they're going to be the ones responding, to your home in the event of a wildfire, to your community. And so having them on board and again, that pre-planning piece is really important. Also getting your HOA or POA on board to make sure that they're aware of the fire dangers, so that you can drum up support through that community avenue is important. But again, I think it just comes back to the pre-planning piece. There have been a number of communities that I've visited with where, for example, they have gates to their driveways. In the event of an emergency, not just necessarily a wildfire response, but say you have a medical emergency, does the fire department know how to get to your home? Are they able to get through that gate to then protect the structure in a wildfire? Or, hey, you have an emergency and, can an ambulance get through your driveway? So there are multiple factors, but it's really just, starting today and trying to get that pre-planning piece in place. It's like Helen Smith said in the video, it's not if, it's when. So it's making sure that you're prepared and you have planning in place. So there's questions about rainwater collection systems, and in communities that have rainwater collection systems or homes that have rainwater collection systems, what that if a fire department uses that collection system, what that looks like. They're taking water away from a homeowner to fight a fire within the community. If there's damage that occurs, what does that process look like? And the short answer is I am not going to be the best one to answer that question. I think that would be more of a again, talking with the local fire departments and having an agreement set up with them. Generally, if a fire department takes your water or takes damages a piece of equipment that you have, again, as a general idea, they're going to try to make you whole as best as they can. One of my chiefs was talking to me about a fire they had out in a rural area where the only source of water was from a farmer's or rancher's water tank. Like that is the only place they could get water within tens of miles. And so after the fact, they came back with water tankers to refill that pond so that he had water for his cattle. And that's an example, but the best best point of contact for that would be your local fire departments and getting them, again, pre-planning and making sure that you have an agreement in place before something happens, rather than trying to retroactively, come up with a situation for that.
Okay, well, I see no other questions.